Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's topic is Newport. Not Newport of the past, but Newport of the future. Today's guest is Jenna Koloski, the Community and Policy Manager for the Vermont Council on Rural Development. She is here today to talk about an upcoming community forum to discuss ways that Newport can move forward into a brighter future. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So, is this a forum that you're holding or a community visit?
So the process is called a community visit process, and it's actually a series of public forums over the next 3 months. So it's a pretty intensive community conversation with the goal to engage everyone in town to have a conversation about potential actions and kind of setting a direction for the future of Newport. Right. So my organization is the Vermont Council on Rural Development. We're charged actually by the federal Farm Bill as a convener of public process, and that doesn't come along with any authority or money or anything like that. It really just says that we are a neutral body in Vermont that can facilitate public conversations. It also allows us to have a really unique board. Our board is made up of top state leaders, federal leaders, leaders of Vermont nonprofits, community representatives, business and private sector leaders, and then uniquely representatives from all three of the congressional delegation offices. So we have a really strong board, and we're a neutral, small, independent nonprofit, and we lead facilitated processes in communities all around the state. So this community visit process in Newport is going to be unique, everyone is, but we have led processes like this in about 56 towns around the state over the last 20 years.
Right. So are all the communities struggling that you've dealt with?
You know, I think what we find, I think every community struggles in its own way. Every community is faced with challenges. Certainly the communities we work with feel that they want to be thinking more about the future of their town. They may feel that they're kind of left behind, that folks in Montpelier, folks in DC aren't paying attention. They're not able to access the resources they need to get these important things done for the town. So yeah, every town's struggling, and we certainly know that over the years Newport has faced some challenges and disappointments as well. But what we also see is that every town we work with has a plethora of opportunities and assets. Every town has great things going on in their community, and this process is to say, what's working well, what are those challenges, but then the critical part of the process is to say, what are the things that we as a community can do to move forward? And you know, the one thing that we're not neutral about is that we feel pretty patriotic about local democracy and the ability of folks locally to come together around positive action ideas and work hard to get things done.
You know, you're not, some people watching this today won't agree with me, but I think there's so much positive going on, not just in Newport, but throughout the Northeast Kingdom. When I say that, I don't look at just like 5 or 10 years. I've lived here since, well, some of my family's been here since the beginning of time, probably since the ice sheet pulled away. Mm-hmm. So I have a little bit longer view of things than somebody even my own age, since I write history. I hear so much negative, and personally I have never gotten anywhere being negative. It doesn't get you anywhere, but I think we have a wonderful area. Mm-hmm. It's like, here's the deal. I might write history for a living, but I don't believe you have to build upon its history. But I think if you try to build upon a mythical history, like there's the myth of Newport, Grand Newport. Newport once had a beautiful Main Street, true. So did almost every other community in the nation have a busy Main Street. So we like to almost create downtown into a myth that we can never live up to. A lot of people don't remember, though, during that same period of time, the city dump was located, right where Gardner Park is so we've created it's almost like some people, they're not going to be happy until they fulfill that myth of the grand Newport. In saying that, though, I look at today the Newport that compared to what I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yes, Main Street is pretty tough at the moment. But Newport has always evolved. But I look at, we have one of the most walkable cities, I swear, around. A few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, sidewalks went in. You can get anywhere you want to go. When I grew up, open sewers poured into the rivers and lakes. We're cleaning our waters up. We've come so far. And there's just so many people, they don't see it. They don't see how far we've come. They only focus on what we don't have. And we need to focus on what we do have and work towards what we...
Yeah, I mean, I think many of the things that you're describing are kind of inherent in the process that we've built in this kind of facilitated structure. I mean, I think what we see in communities all around the state is that, you know, in the absence of a positive collective direction or vision, you end up in these kind of circular and sometimes and often negative conversations where that are dominated by complaints and concerns rather than moving forward. And I think that's something that all communities at one or more times in their history get stuck in. And we don't think that this process is going to answer all the challenges in every town, and certainly we don't think that in Newport. And as neutral facilitators, we don't know what's best for Newport. But our hope is that when you have a facilitated platform for discussion, you can kind of try and get beyond that circular back and forth and say, okay, so here are the things that are really great. Like you said, there's some walkable downtown, some new opportunities in recreation, cropping up in Newport. The lake is what an amazing asset right in the downtown. There's so many great things going on in Newport, and there are challenges, and we're going to name those too. We're not scared of bringing challenges into the room and saying, well, here's what we're experiencing now at this time. And then we spend the bulk of the time saying, so what are we going to do? And the core kind of fundamental part of this process is that it's not about kind of setting this big broad vision that sits on the shelf, and it's not about setting a plan for the city council or for folks in Montpelier or for leaders in DC. It's a plan for it's an action platform, really, for what the community wants to take on. So it's saying, what can we do as residents? And so the goal is to engage volunteers and kind of drive some enthusiasm and new or existing energy around initiatives, and then to connect with the resources that may be needed to get those things done.
Now, I think we've talked about this. Your struggle will be, and I'm not sure if it's your struggle to fight, but is to get the people to go to these. I don't mean just the talkers, because there's people who will go to any meeting just to talk, but they seldom do.
Yeah.
But we have so many people in this area who are doing, but they're not the ones who often go to the meetings, because
Sure.
I think a lot of people, and I will tell you this, is a lot of people, especially the doers, have grown kind of weary of
Meetings.
studies
Yeah,
and
yeah,
meetings,
yeah.
and it gets in
I
the
hear
way of
that.
actually doing. How
Yeah.
do you differentiate yourself, say, from, are you familiar with the RUDAT that
Yeah,
came through
yeah,
here?
heard about
And
the the White and Burke study,
yeah,
certainly.
and all that was supposed
Yeah.
to, some people got the feeling that was supposed to be poof, there, Newport's here.
Right. We did the study, and now it's. So I think first I just want to make sure to say, in terms of the invitation, the first step in this process is going to be on December 13th.
Right.
And everyone is invited to engage. And I think what you mentioned in terms of, we want those people that are already going to meetings. We want the people who are engaged and have that history and knowledge of what's going on now and what's gone on in the past. But we want to bring new people into this process as well. We're inviting, I just dropped off 300 flyers at the elementary school. Those will go home in every student's backpack. I'm going to drop off bookmarks at the library today that'll go in every book that leaves the library. I'm gonna meet with the Rotary and invite them to come. I'm gonna get students up at the Career Center are gonna put flyers all around town. The city's agreed to do a mailing to everybody on the grand list in town. So we're getting the word out any way we can, having this conversation today. And we, one of the things I think is most valuable in a process like this, setting the direction is key. Connecting with resources, which we bring in state leaders, federal leaders, philanthropic donors. We bring in people who can bring technical and financial assistance. But the other value is engaging new volunteers into community work. When we work with a small town, the first thing I do is start making phone calls, and I say, who's the leader of the school board in town, and who's on the select board, and who's just a local engaged resident that would be interested in having this conversation, and who's a parent. And many times they say, oh, well, that's Mary, because it's one person, right, that's doing all those different roles. And so we really want to say, who are those people that could be really great community leaders that maybe aren't engaged now? And at the end of this process, once the priorities are chosen, so say there's 4 priorities chosen, we help to build volunteer task forces, and we work to appoint chair people, local chairs. And often it's their first time ever chairing a committee like that. And I think, to me, that's a really fundamental and valuable part of the process. So, in terms of distinguishing, we certainly know about and respect all the work that went into the RUDAT study, certainly the more recent White and Burke study and plan. I think what distinguishes this process in a lot of ways is we're very pragmatic and practical, and the goal isn't to come out with a big vision and plan. It's really to say, what are I guess the way to look at it is, sometimes if you build a list of 20 different things you could do, often that ends up sitting on the shelf because it's so overwhelming, and you're not going to get anything done when you have a list of 20 to 100 things to do. But when you whittle down that list and say, well, these are all good ideas, but what are the very practical, actionable things we can do right now? And then build a committee, and you build a list of action ideas, and you bring resources in, you can really very quickly move forward and kind of catalyze action in that direction. And so this process, the result are 3 to 5 often task forces with very practical action steps with volunteer engagement that move forward. And it's, we run very business-like meetings, very practical, and the goal isn't to have a plan that sits on the shelf. That would be a failure of this process.
Now, is this just focused on Newport?
Well, so we brought together a steering committee a couple weeks back. We looked at, like I said, we start making phone calls, and we look at representatives from all different parts of town. We had representation from the hospital, from the business community, the arts, the faith community, the schools in town, just community members that are engaged and interested in town. So we kind of look at that spectrum across the community, and they help us to guide and shape the process. They've named this process, which will kick off on December 13th, Re-Newport, with the sense that this is a chance to come together and look and set direction for the future. We also ask them, who's invited to take part? We don't make those decisions, and overwhelmingly in this steering committee and at every town we work with, really, people say, we want everyone to engage that feels like they're a part of the Newport community. So whether you live in Newport, work in Newport, come into Newport, have kids in the school in Newport, whatever it is, if you feel a part of the community, no one's going to be turned away from the conversation.
Because I think you're familiar with this area. It's like it's kind of hard to distinguish now. Like Derby is now probably considered the retail hub. It went from the suburbs of Newport to now where it's more the retail center. But you have the retail center, yet on the other hand, Newport plays a vital role in the sense of it is a center in its, maybe not the retail center anymore, but it's a center of activity. It has the lake. Derby has the lake in it too, but it's not positioned as in such a way that so I think Derby, particularly Derby and Newport, needs to have a close working relationship. And if you read the papers, that hasn't always been the case. It's been a kind of a back and forth relationship.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I would say, if there are folks in Derby that feel connected to the conversation, everyone's invited and welcome. And, so on the 13th, the way that the event's going to be structured is we have 9 different forums that happen from 2:30 all the way until 8:30 at night. So it's a packed day, and there's 3 forums happening at any given time, so 9 total. And they're on topics like public transportation, downtown, economic development, tourism and marketing. So this is a wide range of topics, and especially, in economic development, you might have that conversation come up to say, one of the challenges that we're seeing is that we really should be connecting better with Derby, and that's not happening for X, Y, and Z reason. And then we'll say, well, what can be done about that? And we kind of go to the group to look for practical ideas that could be put on the wall that would say, we could build a coalition of businesses between Derby and Newport, whatever that looks like. And then what we do is we look at the notes. We get like 20 pages of dense notes, and we read through all of them. And we start to do like a cluster analysis where, if something about business growth and development comes up in economic development, but it also comes up in tourism and marketing, and it also might come up in connecting the community. You see these threads, and we build a list of, take those notes, we build a list of, usually it's like 20 to 25 ideas. We come back a month later, review all those ideas together, and that's when we have a really deep conversation with the community to look at the ideas on the table, and we ask people to champion them. And so you might have someone stand up and say, well, I think the most important thing we can be doing now is working on economic development and connecting with Derby to do that, or whatever ideas on the table, and it'll be the chance to champion those ideas and then whittle it down to the top 3 to 5 priorities. So yeah, all ideas are welcome on the table, and anyone is welcome to come and share that idea.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know where people seem to get stuck, and I know this is where they're going to get stuck again. It's like a stuck record. EB5. I'm really grown tired of hearing about the block being torn down.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's gone. The block is gone. No amount of complaining is going to make it poof, go back up. And people, since I write history, people have asked me, well, but weren't those buildings historic? No, they were old. I get older every day. I do not get more historic. Just because something's old, don't make it historic. But people have, they have to look at that block being gone as, instead of looking at it being gone, look at it as opportunity. It really is an opportunity because that block was not this beautiful, stately brick block or something. It was needing either massive refurbishing or it needed to come down. And my thing is, I have the honor of leading tours or just spending time with visiting media folks from around the world. We have a lot, Vermont, the Northeast Kingdom, and Newport. There's a lot of media attention on this area. For some reason, I think partly because of what happened with the EB5.
Sure.
Make the best of it. Don't get on, every time you have a camera in your face, doesn't mean you have to weep and wail and wring your hand, because that is not us. That is not who the majority of the people are. It's we lace up our boots and we get to work. And we can't create an image that we're whining.
Yeah, I mean, I think that challenge of the Renaissance block is absolutely going to come up throughout this process. I think, when we talk about challenges or even potentially opportunities, I think that'll come up. And, I think what we want to say, and I look at, that White and Burke report, and they're saying, here are the things that you might focus on in terms of this block, but they're also saying, there's all these other things that you can be doing as a city to be boosting downtown revitalization, to be taking advantage of, recreation along the waterfront, business opportunity along the waterfront. And there's all these other ideas that you can be looking at, and that's where we're going to focus, is what can be done and what are those action ideas. And in terms of the kind of complaints, we're going to hear those complaints and we're going to take note of them. We're going to put them in the notes, but then we're going to say, great, like we've captured that challenge, but what can be done? And as facilitators, that's what we do best. Like we're not social engineers. We don't know what's best for Newport. We don't know what's best for any town. But what we do know how to do is run an effective business-like meeting that helps to move forward and capture those complaints, but then to really say, but what is it that can be done? So, so what's next for the town? And I don't think this process is going to, I know that there's a great deal of work going on with the city is working hard with other partners on thinking about the future of that block. We know that's moving forward. None of this is going to get in the way of that work, but it's to say, what else can be done to boost the community and to set a positive direction.
As I was telling you, you've got to reach out to the people not typically involved,
Yeah.
or their brains aren't often picked. But like, I think of two people, and they're two vastly different people. Dina Gray, the owner of the East Side, raised on a farm, one of the hardest working people you will ever meet.
Well, we're very excited because Dina actually is, so on December 13th, in between those forums, so business-like forums, but then there's this at 6 p.m., 6 to 7, there's a big community dinner and celebration.
At the East Side?
Dina, it's going to be at the City Hall, but Dina's catering.
Right.
And I think it's
Dina,
going to be
Dina
incredible.
has a lot more. Dina's not a person to go to meetings, but I will tell you, Dina has more knowledge of this area and is working than very. But then on the flip side, you have right on Main Street one of the most successful businesses of a woman who was born in Thailand. It's the new. Well, it's not new anymore. It's the Thai restaurant Exi. She knows how to, she knows how to run a business.
Yeah.
She like when she first started, my wife and I were often some of the only people there, because Thai food was relatively new.
Yeah.
But she, with listening to people, tweaking things, she has been able to turn having one table with two people sitting at it to just a bustling Thai restaurant on Newport's Main Street.
Well, we hope that everyone comes out to these forums, restaurant owners, business owners, community members, parents, school bus drivers. We want everyone to be involved. I think the more diverse interests and perspectives that you have in a room, the better the outcomes in a process like this. And, on December 13th, in the room, both for the dinner and for the forums, not only do we want to have that broad diversity of community members like those that you mentioned that understand and know the issues and opportunities that face Newport and can share those ideas, we also are bringing with us a visiting team of resource leaders, folks like we've got Ted Brady, the Deputy Secretary of Agency of Commerce. We'll have representatives from all 3 congressional offices. We have the Commissioner of Community Development and Housing, VHCB, Vermont Land Trust. We look at this list: health and wellness, housing, caring for our children. We look at those topics, and we invite the top visionaries and state, federal philanthropic leaders. We're close partners with the Vermont Community Foundation in this work. So we bring them, and they sit there for the day. And our rule for them, and they're not as used to this rule, but no speeches, no talking about their work. They're here for Newport. And they're here to listen to folks like Dina, like the owner of the Thai restaurant, and any, the principal of the school, whoever it is, to listen to what's going on in Newport. And then they have a little window at the end to reflect and to share their ideas and resources with the community. And we ask them to commit to being a resource to Newport. And so one value in this process is that, in Johnson, we saw they were having some infrastructure issues with their roads and bridges in town. We invited the Secretary of Transportation, who had to sit there all day and see out the window a bridge that's, crumbling into the river. And then that, Johnson's bridge project goes from the middle of the priority list for Vermont transportation to the top. And eventually they're able to cobble together millions in resources to redevelop their entire streetscape in town. So, I think not only do we want to hear from every community member in town, but it's also a chance to connect with these state leaders. And what we hear, in Newport especially, is people are coming to us saying, we've got resources to bring to Newport, and we're not exactly sure where to plug in. And they really are looking to this process as a way to plug in.
Oh, you've hit it. There's so many groups, too.
Yeah.
And some groups aren't really functioning groups. So if you're an outsider trying to figure out, it must be a real challenge, because trying to figure out who's who and how things are. I will tell you, in more recent years, first of all, I used to be a newspaper reporter, so I used to go to meetings on that forum. I once served in legislature, so I go to meetings. We have a new group of people in general who don't know how to. They sometimes create an uncomfortable atmosphere at meetings. Like they're not respectful of other people's opinions, and they make it known whether it's gasping or whatever. Are you going to make sure that everybody feels comfortable?
Absolutely. I think our fundamental core principle as facilitators is to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. In this process, no one person owns the process, and no one gets more say than another. So, even though the city council and I should say we don't work with any town where we're not invited. Newport City Council did invite this process,
Right.
But now they go into it with an understanding that they and everyone else becomes equals in the process. And as facilitators, we manage that. We make sure that everyone in the room is heard. We make sure that no one person dominates, and we drive the conversation in a positive direction. That's critical.
Because I'll tell you, because I've spent most of my career going to meetings for one form or another, I'm comfortable with whatever. But there's a lot of people who I think don't go to meetings just because they've never really been to them, and they don't. And certainly, I think lately, to have if you were to speak your opinion, to have them shot down either through body gestures or verbal, I think would make some people feel totally unwelcome. So I appreciate the fact that you are going to be controlling the meeting, because I'm going to say it. We only have a few more minutes left, but while I think you have a tough job ahead of you, we have so many opportunities here. There's so much positive. I've been accused on going through life with rose-colored glasses, because I have the ability to find the good in almost everybody and the good in almost any situation, because I have never gotten anywhere just weeping and wailing and talking about doing. And I am by far I'm not the only one doing it. There's so many success stories, whether it's in Newport, whether it's in Derby, or anywhere else in the Northeast Kingdom. Unfortunately, those often aren't talked about, but that positiveness is really starting to spread in different ways throughout the Northeast Kingdom. We have a lot of bright spots here in the kingdom, and I think the people of Newport also need to understand that if they look at the long history of Newport, no, it was not the mythical Newport that we love to pretend it was, but it was a far richer place. It was a logging community. It was a center of activity. It was fishing. But then it was the other things. It was the boxing community. It had boxing. It had rum running during Prohibition. It has a rich, proud history. But don't try to build. Newport will never be. Some people in Newport will never be happy until they can recreate the myth that never was.
Well, for us, it's all about the practical action, and it's all about building on those opportunities and history. And we embrace a challenge. Every town that we work with, there's one challenge or another, and we truly are dedicated to Vermont communities, and really feel that the way to move forward in a positive direction is to bring a community together and find those spear points of action and become the squeaky wheel to get those resources, to get the attention of folks that can bring technical assistance and support, and to get those things done. And we see it happening all over the state in every community we work with. So I hope that everyone in town will come out on December 13th. We have a whole schedule that shows the 9 forums and the topic areas. And if folks are interested in learning more, there's information on our website, which is vtrural.org, or they can contact me, Jenna, at the Vermont Council on Rural Development, and always happy to talk about the process more.
What is your number?
225-6091.
Well, I really do wish you luck, because as I said, I've lived in Derby now for most of my life, but I grew up in Newport, and Newport is a great community. Yes, it has its challenges, but the challenges are not nearly as bad as what some people might lead you to believe. Newport is a is a great community,
Yeah.
and I think it's getting better with every passing day. And good change does not happen overnight.
No, and I appreciate your luck, but not about us at all. You know, I think this is all about the community, and we're here working in support of Newport, and we're looking forward to a positive conversation about the future, and to build on all those things you're mentioning, and to decide what's next. And we hope we hear from everyone in town.
Okay, thank you for coming on the
Yeah,
show.
thank you so much.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.